Everybody, welcome to Town Hall. Thanks for joining us today. I've had a couple of weeks away from the Town Hall, or the Town Hall has had a couple of weeks away from me. There was graduation, actually a couple of those, and then last week I was on the Pine River in northwest Michigan, trying to keep myself out of the water. Actually, there was a moment. If you read Winnie the Pooh, which you should do, there's a moment at the end of, I think, Winnie the Pooh, when he, as opposed to House at Pooh Corners, when there's a flood and he has to escape on a pot of honey. And in that little story, there's this delightful little moment when he names the jar that he's on, the floating bear. And there's this whole conversation about whether or not Winnie the Pooh or the floating bear is meant to be on top as he makes his escape. And indeed, there was a moment when the kayak and I had a real conversation about who was going to be on top. But it was a great trip. Sadly, that means no town hall, but we're back. We're back for a little while. Next week, I am away again at a conference around boards and how boards run universities and things like that as I try to learn a little something. So anyway, that's for this week and next week. The little bit as we let people join, I'm going to sort of move on to my update. But first, I'm delighted to have our folks from Strategic Enrollment Management and the Early Start and curricular work. Rosalind Franklin University has done something really special over the last year, special and rare, and that is finding a way for our students to start early. There are lots of excellent academic reasons to do this that I witnessed as a dean. We had a whole bunch of programs where we would start students in the summer and decompress the first year, and it really did make a difference for lots of students. So a lot of great academic reasons for us to be doing this. There are also some technical financial aid reasons for us to be doing this, which I think, we'll talk about over the course of the hour, really been a benefit to our students and our institution. But in the order in which they showed up on my desk, I am delighted to have Marc Glucksman, Professor and Chair of Biochemistry and Molecular Biology, Marc Grumet, Associate Professor in the Scholl College of Podiatric Medicine, Marilyn Hanson, Associate VP for Interprofessional Operations in the Baldwin Institute and Assistant Professor in the College of Health Professions, Sarah Kelly, our Vice President for Strategic Enrollment Management, and John Rhodes, Associate VP for Student Financial Services. They are going to talk to us about early start. Questions are going to be fun. So, and in case you don't have any, don't think Sarah doesn't prepare because I have a lot of them. So, anyway, I don't want to do all that work. So, feel free to put your questions in about what I'm going to talk about or our content and panel for the day. Basically, the last week I've been spending time on things that may never come to fruition or will come to fruition in 2 years or are prep for the board meeting at the end of the month. So we have our spring board meeting at the end of June. The couple of big things happen there, but the biggest is approval of the budget. But we have three areas of, I'm going to call it board education that we're doing. So we have a presentation about fundraising and the potential of doing a comprehensive fundraising campaign. We have a presentation on the Healthy Mind Survey, which we did on the town hall a month or two ago. So the board knows a little something about what's going on. And then Sarah is going to present, Sarah and I and Gavin and some others are going to be talking about early start and the federal loan set of circumstances that we're working with so the board can be thinking about what we need to do in the future. And there are it's a really complicated business. We can try to answer as many questions as we can today, but a lot of it is still sort of aspirational and trying to predict the future. In terms of the budget, the main thing that we've been working on over the last few weeks is that we are renegotiating our healthcare cost situation, our insurance plans. It turns out that they want to charge us another 25 or 50% to 50%, depending on the section that you're looking at. So we have the HMOs, which are just sort of the cost, but then we also have PPOs where we are self-insured. We pay the first 150,000 basically, and then we have a backup insurance plan that comes after that. So we are looking at both what those costs are. Just so you know, about 40% of that cost is pharmacy, and 60% of that are specialty drugs, whether the GLP-1s that get a whole lot of media attention or some spectacular biologics and immunologic drugs that have changed people's lives. So I want you to recognize we know these drugs are important, but they are also expensive. So we're trying to figure that out and how to handle that. Gavin has found some really interesting things where people might be able to sign up for decreases in their deductible, but have a different way of getting their drugs. So we'll see what that all adds up to over the course of the month. This is a national trend that we're all working on. So, but we're also working on fundraising. I spend a fair amount of time each week talking to people, working on that, and just some stuff about land use. So, which probably doesn't show up for 12, 18, 36 months, maybe well after I'm retired. There's just a whole lot of interesting sort of, it's kind of fun if you're president to think about that kind of stuff, which is not at all what I was trained to do, but interesting nonetheless. I'm happy to answer questions about any of this. So feel free to put questions into the Q&A as we leave my little update. And certainly, so if a question occurs to you along the way. But Sarah, this is the point where I'm going to turn it over to you all to talk about sort of the remarkable work. And I want to sort of re-stress, most institutions have not been able to pull this off. The vast majority of institutions have not been able to pull this off, even if they wanted to. They had neither the university machinery, nor the dedicated faculty, nor the sort of esprit de corps to pull this off. So I think it's a remarkable achievement, and I'm going to turn the screen over to you all.
Great, thank you. I am going to hopefully share.
Yeah, perfect.
Oh my gosh, see, that's the most stressful part for me. This is now it's easy. All right, thank you, Erin, and I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited that we are literally 3 days away from what has been a very long process. And so I'll tell you a little bit about the very first part of this, right? But because it's a very small part that became, we start to think in concentric circles as more and more people got involved and more people thought about this. That's where we are now. Because the whole thing of it takes a village is very apt to describe this. So we've actually been planning for something like this, not something like this, but we've been planning for the changes that are going to occur on July 1st since February of 2025. A group of us got together early on and said, let's just assume the worst possible case happens, and let's start thinking about what we would do if that happened. And in fact, a year ago right now at the June board meeting, I gave a presentation on student debt and what might happen when the access to Grad Plus, if the access to Grad Plus and loan caps came to be. And then lo and behold, on July 4th last year, the One Big Beautiful Bill was signed. Prior to that, we had our normal summer start. So we were always saying this is a great thing that some of our programs start in the summer, start in late May, early June. Almost all of CHP, with the exception of BMS and clinical psychology, all of nursing. And so how fortunate those programs were to be sort of have this 1 year exemption of 1 year more time to plan and think. And so the actual, if people have heard me talk about this is not a lie. I woke up literally in the morning of July 6th, and at 2:20 is my time I wake up. I don't know about the rest of you when you're worrying, 2:20. And I just thought, well, start early. What if we could start early? And I went back to sleep. Then I decided to send an email to my boss, Jim Carlson. But what this group needs to understand is that Jim had been my boss for about a week. Dr. Parsley had retired. Jim had assumed the interim role. And so this poor man gets an email from an over-caffeinated enrollment manager going like, hey, this is a weird idea. What do you think? And to his credit, he said, well, actually what he said was, let's talk about it when we next meet, frankly, and put some thought into it. And when I sat down with him, he said, shop it. And let's start having quiet conversations about it. So from that point, it became a can we? The first question is, can we, right? So I went to John Rhodes and said, could we do this from a financial aid perspective? I remember John sitting there. He was almost bobbing his head. And John, you said, yeah, I think we can. And here's what we would need to do. I went to academic and faculty affairs then and said, can we? What about HLC and IBHE? And the answer I got was, as long as it's part of the curriculum, as long as it's a required course, as long as you're not doing something new that hasn't been approved or reviewed by IBHE, as long as it's, as long as you're not trying to flim flam, right? That this is a legitimate academic endeavor. Yes, went to admission, Brian Moody. He thought, yes. So then the next part of it was to present it to the deans. And we had our provost academic council meeting, and we threw it out there. And it was again then you understand all of the programs have to check with all of their individual accreditors, and they have to check with their faculty and their curricular committees. And so then it became a should we? So it went from can we to should we? And it's just when you look at the involvement that had to happen, the buy-in that had to happen, and the agreement that had to happen, down to asking IT to create a new quarter in our system. And we have a clunky system. We had to create a new start, asking the registrar to create new things, asking student success and wellness on the heels of coming off of an orientation to, hey, maybe get ready for an online orientation. Again, at finance, do you know that when we start in one fiscal year, that flows into another fiscal year, and hey, that we have to talk about that. So it's been a real learning opportunity for me as we go. But I think the should we part bears a lot of discussion, because something that I've always known and respected, the faculty own their curriculum, period, full stop, right? But this is where the conversations got, actually, this is where I had to step away from the conversation. I don't own this. This is not my lane. I had to rely on deans and program chairs and Bob Intine and other people starting to talk about what would this be as a really good academic experiment, because it can't just be about financial aid. It can't. If it's curricular, if it's about starting, how do we ensure that it's an experiment that is worth doing? So I'd really like to stop this part and open it up to my other colleagues, and Aaron and other folks to start to weigh in on this, because it just kept getting those concentric circles and this is the time that took the most amount of time, is the agreement on what are we teaching, how are we teaching it, who is teaching it, why are we teaching it? And so I'd love for Aaron and Marc Grumet and Marc Glucksman to start to weigh in on that, about when they were approached and what happened there.
So, Sarah, I have a question before we get to that, because most of us who live in colleges understand curriculum and admissions, and maybe the conversation between admissions and curriculum and things like that. But until you get to the university level, you never really run into enrollment management, let alone strategic enrollment management. Could you tell us what that is?
Oh, yes, I think. Uh, it is we have a complex university system in that we are not one entity. We
Mhm.
have 6 colleges, all with very different needs. And so strategic enrollment management, as I see it, is to be a service not only to students, but as a service center to the institution in how we cultivate and enroll, cultivate, package, enroll, and ultimately help retain students. And so we do a lot of the scout work, frankly, of enrollment. Our job is to tee up great slates of candidates to the admission committees of each of the colleges because we have no skin in that game. That has to be done at the college level through an admission committee. Marc Grumet and I worked very closely together when he was doing a lot of that work in Scholl. And so it is the decision that lies solely with the academic enterprise as it ought, but ours is to try to make it as frictionless as possible. Are we good at it? We're getting better. Can we always improve? Yes. Sometimes it's clunky, but that's ultimately what we do to try to find the best students for each of our individual programs. Enroll them, make sure that's not just a choice to enroll one quarter, it's enrolling every year, and make sure they get through to the best of their ability.
The thing that I've learned by watching this process is, the remarkable interplay between the data that you guys collect, what you know of our system, how we use that in marketing, how you decide where to put resources and attention and things like that. And not that we've figured out how to use this, but one of the pieces of data you gave me once was at another institution, if a family spent $200 at the spirit store, they were coming,
Yeah.
right? Which then meant you didn't have to spend any more money on those people, right? You don't need to send them any more emails. You don't need to like there's a whole point at which you strategically decide we need to put more energy into this group of people to let them know what a good experience they would have with us, or nope, we're done. We can move on to another group of people. And no college has people with that kind of expertise, let alone facility with the data. Admissions committees and people like that are just sort of like doing their best, but never wander into those other areas. And yeah, it's been fascinating and interesting to watch. And you guys are really impressive at making the most of our resources and figuring out where the students are that really should be with us, and how to help them make that choice.
Thanks, Aaron. It's nice to have the team acknowledge that way. And I think
Mhm.
even this week, the sort of weird data points that we were looking at to try to make
Mhm.
sure that everybody was going to check in and
Yep.
everybody was starting on Monday is just how many times did the student open that email? When did they
Yeah.
open it last? Why are they opening it in the middle of the night? I mean, it
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
kind of conversation that
Yeah.
Nicole Odiambo is having with the team, and it worked because I can tell you everybody but 6 have checked in for Monday. Everybody at 6, and that's 288 students,
Yeah.
and that's that kind of work.
All
So
right. So
thanks for that.
that was not answering your question, which was really about the curricular side of this. So I'll let some. I could talk for days about curriculum, but I'll let someone else take a swing at this.
Well, I can say, and I think Aaron and Mark know this, that we talked about, in my mind, I was like, well, why don't you just make it hips? Well, the hips folks might have something to say about that, right? And so, because everybody takes hips, everybody loves hips. Why wouldn't we just do that? And that's where I again am so impressed with the fealty that and the fidelity that our faculty have about the student experience academically. And that's where I started to learn a lot about what goes into the faculty side. So I'd love to have Marilyn and Mark start to talk about how they were approached and
Sure, I'm happy to jump in on that one. And a lot of this comes down to communication. So our first communications around this were from Jim Carlson. And if you've communicated with Jim Carlson, that whatever you're talking about is ultimately going to come to fruition. He said, "Can you make this happen?" And we said, "Oh yeah, we can make it happen," which was really the only answer. That was the only acceptable answer on that one. And so, he said, "Well, we need to make this happen in a way that's meaningful for the students. It can't simply be that we're meeting this deadline. We've got to do it in a way that's going to be meaningful." And so in the HIPS course, our goal, and I should stop and sort of, if Lori Tinty's out there, just thank her for creating a foundation on which we could build our journey. She set us up to be able to do this. And that course is really about having students learn from, with, and about one another, and about the professions that they've chosen. So how do you make that happen when you've got different groups of students starting at different times? And to understand why that's a challenge, you have to understand the pillars of the course, which are sort of large group presentations, which we try to choose things that are broadly applicable, like opioid use disorder. We have interprofessional panel discussions, which showcase each of the professions here at Rosalind Franklin, and then even some other professions, to help students understand where they fall in the healthcare system. And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, there are small group interprofessional team interactions and assignments. And that's really where our major concern was, is how do we maintain the integrity of that if we've got different groups of students starting at the same time? And so the credit to the Baldwin folks and Marilyn and Robin and Thad and all the people, Abby, that were involved in this, and Jim, that sat down and said, "Okay, how can we arrange this in such a way that everybody gets what they need from this course?" And so the long and the short of it is that you can kind of think about HIPS as being an A and a B quarter. And the B quarter is where all of that super important interprofessional interaction happens. And so our summer folks will do the A quarter and then the B quarter. And our fall start students will do the B quarter and then the A quarter. And that allows us to have the overlap that allows the interprofessional interaction between students to happen. In the end, everyone will get what they need out of the course. And with any luck, this will all turn out very well.
So I guess I'll go next. So first, even though I'll be the face of the medical school for this summer experiment, first of all, we're ready, and COVID taught us all about remote teaching. So technically, we're ready. But as Sarah said, it really does take a village. And even though I'm the face and I'm presenting, develop the content, presenting the content, there's so many dedicated people who work behind the scenes. My academic partner, Beth Hill, who is the administrator, basically puts it together and makes it in a form that students can see it. Dr. Prasad Reddy, Ashwini Mokashi, Dr. Brenda Alfinati, who helped develop the clinical content. And we have countless facilitators for our first schema case, which is actually a clinical case that we present, introducing students to real clinical sequelae. And that goes all the way up to the top, to the support of Dr. Everly, who's the chair of FSH, and Dean Chatterjee at the medical school. We have, Office of Medical Education, Student Affairs, support of a downstream team, all together. And so if you take a look at my background, it actually has a lot of significance. So our early start spans at least 200 students in the medical school and will span, to my last count, 13 time zones. So I'm going to have office hours, and my office hours are at night. I was looking at basically the world clock and, okay, when can people come in very, very early?
13 time zones.
Yes. So it's roughly from... I know we have a student or two in Hawaii, and it goes across. We have students who will be in Europe and Africa.
Yeah, amazing,
Oh.
amazing.
Yeah, so it's almost like an international meeting. So we're very student-centric, and I think that is the theme in 2 words for this entire endeavor. And my personal goal is to teach, but also inhibit excess cortisol secretion. And I think we can accomplish that. So I'm here, even though I have a bunch of roles here at RFU. I'm the course director of Scientific Foundations of Medicine, and Monday is Fun Day. That's when we start. So just sort of in 1 minute, what are we going to be teaching this summer? So the first hour is about proteins. They have problems. We give 6 diseases right off the bat in the first 20 minutes. We start talking about that. And also, we have to bring in, and I'm now looking to Marilyn, we bring in AI, okay? And it's AI and drug discovery. And that's first, okay, so that's the first hour. And then the other topic that we spend a few hours on in the summer is nutrition. And this is another sort of government mandate that's coming down the road, is that if Washington has its way, medical schools will be mandated to provide at least 20 hours of nutrition education. Now, don't worry about that. By the definition of what we do, we have that covered. There are medical schools that signed a pledge that they swear they're going to do this. And then finally, we end up with enzymes' role in health and disease. We bring in receptors and agonists, which are not enzymes, but essentially, students will have a conceptual knowledge how 75% of all drugs mechanistically work. And then lastly, we have something called a schema case, and this is a clinical sequela around a real clinical case. And I hope no students are watching this because I'll give you the spoiler alert. First is a big local problem. It's about food insecurity. So this is a spin-off of nutrition. It's an endemic problem here in Lake County, as well on South and West Sides in Chicago, about food deserts, and essentially you just don't supply more calories and everybody's going to be healthy. That's not how it works. So that's roughly our summer, and I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, that is exciting. I remember working on a curriculum, and what we really, really wanted was essentially a pre-matriculation set of foundations, just to remind you of the things you should have learned in school, but also orient some of what you know toward what we're going to be doing. And it sounds great.
And I should point out that it's really a different mindset because, for instance, biochemistry, that's undergraduate, and it's actually now in the last probably 8-9 years required for the MCAT, so that revived undergraduate biochemistry. This is not the same.
Yeah.
Okay, we're not memorizing structures. It's not, put it this way, it's not like a generation ago in medical school when you had to memorize pathways and structures. That's not what we're teaching. We focus on health versus pathology and diseases and regulation. But it's also the mindset, and this is bigger sort of the United States. Medicine is evidence-based. It's not belief-based. It's not opinion-based. And just getting that gestalt across the first day sort of really, sets the tone.
That's great, because so much of what we do need to know as clinicians is the biochemistry you need to either, one, make a diagnosis, or two, talk about and make decisions about therapy. Those are the key skills that come out of that knowledge. So yeah, that's wonderful.
I would just make a pitch, Dr. Glucksman. One of the schools that signed on to the pledge, the nutrition pledge, reached out to our nutrition folks in the College of Health Professions, specifically Melissa Bernstein, and they're interested in some of our curriculum. So there you go. Marilyn, would you talk a little bit about what the students are going to get on Monday?
Yeah. So I guess our main concern was we knew that this is going to be the student's first experience and introduction to Rosalind Franklin University. So we wanted to make sure that we brought them in and together as their first experience. So on Wednesday, we have 2 sessions, one at noon and one in the afternoon, where they will be introduced to Provost Carlson, which I think is really exciting. The course faculty, including the fall faculty, which is Dr. Robin Dyer and Dr. Marc Grumet, and they are the primary course directors. Myself and Dr. Abby Leiden, and Thad Anzer, who will be doing a team experience with them, which is going to be really fun. It'll get them in their teams early. So then when they interact online, they'll know each other and they'll have some context. So we're super excited about that. And then we have them broken into interprofessional groups throughout the rest of the 6 weeks that they're in the summer quarter. And they will be working on different activities. We are really fortunate in that Robin Dyer and Marc Grumet were really forward thinking and were able to provide the content for us. So for Abby and I, we're able to kind of focus on the experience and the team experience. So they're going to have team projects. They have some individual projects, some reflection assignments. So it should be engaging, and I think it'll be fun for them to work together over the summer.
We should mention that we invited Abby to be part of this group, and she is on vacation in Mexico, and I don't know why she didn't
Good
want to.
choice.
Yeah, I know. I even said you could
her
photobomb
family.
or just bomb us with a margarita in your hand, and she declined. So yeah, but she's been a.
She actually offered to do it, but she said she would. So
No, come on, you got to be on vacation.
Yeah.
Right.
Those of you who are not on vacation, though, feel free to put a question into the Q&A. Just because it's always more fun with questions. But who's next on the hit parade here?
I would love for John to talk a little bit about what it took.
Yeah, absolutely. I look at this from the financial aid perspective, which is oftentimes looked at as being the technical side of this. And I feel like I brought, whenever July 4th came along and this decision came along, is I was looking at a compliance problem. And I went across the hallway and I talked with Dr. Kelly and we discussed it. And then we met later that week on our biweekly meeting. And what I found is that I really wasn't asking the right questions. And I was fortunate because I went to someone who was able to ask better questions, someone who could essentially look at what this compliance problem was and see it as an opportunity, a curricular opportunity. And so for me, the origin of this was a financial aid problem. But the amazing part of it is that in financial aid, most people will probably realize I stay in my office most of the day because I'm just working, with students or whatever the situation is. But for me, it broadened my perspective a little bit. And I'm in this forum with a lot of people with very strong vocabularies. One of my favorite words I heard today is bona fide, which is honestly one of the things that I realized very quickly is that the university is full of people who are really bona fide experts. And we don't get to always work with them. And this is a problem that immediately pushed from being a financial aid issue, which was just a speed bump for the university itself, because it progressed from that compliance problem to immediately moving forward with administration and faculty and leadership. And Dr. Kelly and Dr. Carlson were able to pull all of those people together that had all of that type of expertise. So it came from my perspective of being like, how do we protect aspect or like the access to this type of a benefit, which is valuable because the legacy provision protects our students and gives them 3 additional years of access to Title IV aid and the Graduate Plus loan. But then it became like, how do we make sure that we're actually helping them in a bigger way? Like the curricular aspect and this de-densifying of the curriculum itself, things that are not my wheelhouse. That I have been honestly blessed to be able to get to learn more about as I've seen how this type of a question and a problem actually becomes much more like an opportunity for a university where we have such capable people.
So that is, I think, that we're starting, this is a hypothesis, right? That what is going to happen as a result of this? How is student learning going to change potentially? How are they going to have earlier confidence? How are we going to measure that? I mean, I'm really interested in sort of the faculty here and what you hope to see. I know Dr. Glucksman, when we were having our conversation about doing this town hall, you were the first one to say this is an experiment. And, what does de-densifying that first quarter of clinical education, I mean, they're about to drink from a fire hose. So what does that do when they are, when they walk on campus, literally going to walk on campus for a formal orientation, that all of that is going to happen and move here. And when they walk on campus, knowing D2L, knowing some faces already, having worked with students, having seen the professors, having that exposure, what does that do to their confidence? What does that do to their readiness? So what are you hopeful for? I really want to know, Dr. Glucksman.
So I think everything you said is absolutely correct. And even though we really did a drastic change to the curriculum, I think we're on our 8th year. It's really all about continuous quality improvement. It's always how can we tweak it? And again, being student-centric, and they are the primary, receivers of it. What can we do to make it easier? So for instance, we're doing this summer part, and we're actually knocking off a week during the regular semester because the fall term is the most intense. And when you think of all the transitions in education, there is nothing that is more drastic than going from college to a health profession. And I can only speak about medical school, but so because we have 1 week less and we're able to spread that out, we're able to give another week to clinical foundations of medicine and also immunology, infection, and hematology, Dr. Everly's course, which is the most intense course, in my personal opinion, in the first 2 years. There's so much, and in immunology, that is one field that is changing almost every week. So we're able to not only spread out, but also places that really need some more time for clarification. And I hope, and everything is metric driven, that this will reflect itself in the boards in a couple of years. So we'll be able to tell if this has an effect. But you're absolutely right. It's sort of de-intensifying it.
So, I actually, my last place, I had 2 medical schools, and one of them moved anatomy entirely to the summer. And there were a couple of things that happened with that. One, they had less melt, which is students leaving them to go somewhere else. And we'll get to talk about that maybe a little bit, Sarah. But the other thing was persistence got better, and they had fewer problems with students suffering and struggling in the first semester, because although I can only speak for medical school, but medical school classes are not harder than college classes. There's just more of it. And so if you can de-intensify some of that first semester, really does help people. And I think that, the question that you guys are going to be testing here about fundamentals is also equally interesting. If you can help prepare people better for what they're going to be doing, how big an impact will that have? That'll be fascinating to see. My belief is you'll actually see that next semester. You won't have to wait for boards. Boards may wash out a whole bunch of stuff because all kinds of life happens in the next 2 years to determine a student's performance, but you may well see differences in that first semester or the first quarter, sorry. But we'll have to see. It'd be fascinating.
I know that when this is the second year of the CMS program doing Jumpstart, and that was part of our calculus in thinking about early start is, we have an experiment.
Remind us what
now.
Jumpstart is, Sarah.
It is, I believe, and I don't know if Antoine's on or
Or
anything,
Marc.
but or Marc, yeah.
So Jumpstart is for a subset of students. It's essentially, what is medical school? How do you approach information? So actually part of what I'm going to be doing in the summer start is what has been Jumpstart the last 2 years. So nutrition, sort of proteins, enzymes, and it's an approach. It's not just the information. How do you manage a lot of information? And you learn about Sisyphus is basically, okay, you can keep rolling that, you can
Right.
keep rolling that giant rock up, but if you sort of take your eye off, it's just going to roll back on you. And it's just managing information, it's managing stress, and it's about time management. I mean, that's sort of one of the most important skills that,
So, yeah, we actually have some questions. So I don't know how many more slides we need to get through, but I'm
No,
going to
that's
do these
it.
questions and
That's
then we're
it.
going to make sure we get through the rest of the presentation. But Anonymous asks, how are we monitoring the effectiveness of early start this year?
I think that's what we were starting to talk about in
Mhm.
terms of Jumpstart, some of the outcomes of Jumpstart just in the first semester. To your point, Aaron, in the first semester, they knew that students were benefiting from
Mhm.
it. So I think it's it's that approach.
and so we're gonna have assessments, starting a week. Monday is fun day, but a week from next Friday, we're going to have an assessment. 2 weeks later, we're having another assessment. And these are sort of, it's not watered down. This is the real thing. We will have,
It-
and those are formative assessments, and they're taken online. Uh,
Yep.
it's going to be part of a summative assessment during the regular semester. So we'll be able to tell, and it's more long-term memory because it's 2 months down the line, how well the information has been integrated. So we'll have something more immediate as far as that's concerned.
It probably would be sound to include some extra questions in the course evaluations as well, just to sort of everything from acceptability to whatever we take confidence to mean, and things like that would be interesting to see. Charlotte Beyer asks, what are some ways you are going to assess the student experience, which I think is what I just maybe mentioned after this launch, but any special student experience things that we're looking to do or assess?
That's a good question.
There
Marilyn?
is a team working on a survey specific to HIPS 515
Mhm.
to assess both the summer start and then the fall start. And they are working on that right now. And that would be, Marc, correct me if I'm wrong, but mid course and then end of course for each.
Yeah.
David Harrison asks, are you going to, I mean, I guess, can we compare the experiences of students who are A then B versus B then A?
Yeah,
That's exactly.
yeah. I think this provides us an opportunity to gather some interesting data as we've never done this before. And so I happen to be a fan of focus groups.
Yeah.
And we've done that in the HIPS course in the past, and gathering a group of students together and having an honest face-to-face conversation sometimes gives us data that you may not catch in a survey. Very often students are like, hey, I got to get the survey done, and they'll fly through it. And if they're upset about something, you'll know. But
Mhm.
what you don't always capture in the surveys is what you might have done well. And of course, we always like to hear about that. And so I suspect at some point, getting together with students who have experienced it both ways and talking to them about what it meant. And I think it's worth noting that we're looking, Marc's course versus the HIPS course, we're looking at some different things here. I think what we're hoping for, and again, Marilyn, please weigh in, is maybe not sort of de-intensifying things so much as helping students to become acquainted with the RFU way of doing things and maybe to meet one another and to become familiar, and if we're able to do that for them, I think we might be able to count that as a success. I'm just not entirely sure how you measure that. What?
So, yeah.
Yeah,
So
the other thing,
Anonymous, oh, sorry.
Well,
Sorry,
can
Marilyn, go.
I just want to mention, sorry, Marilyn, you go. You were first.
the other thing that we are interested in is creating some IP champions
Yeah.
before the fall quarter,
Yeah.
getting
That's
some
cool.
students excited about it. And then when they're in the fall quarter with the other cohort, that it will be set with champions excited about IP.
One of the distinctions I think that's worth mentioning here, and I think this is his AB, Dr. Harrison's ABBA, the medical school has to start as a cohort. They have to all start at the same time. So that's why you have, it's not 200, Mark. Archie will tell you every single time it's 203. It's 203 starting on Monday, because, and we've already matriculated them. And you know, in AMCAS and everything that we're supposed to do. But we have the ability now to continue to recruit in, so we were able to have podiatry and nursing, MENP, and pharmacy choose their start. Because we couldn't make them all start the same, and the deans didn't want that. They wanted the flexibility. So we're not finished recruiting, although we have good stats to share, and I'll share with you in a minute for podiatry. And so I think that'll be interesting. Was there a benefit to those students who chose to start early versus the students who started at the regular or you know, usual time? So I think that that's a really good point that David made.
So Anonymous has a question. Is there any concern about students being eligible for financial aid for an extra quarter? So CMS students have historically had 14 quarters. Now it's 15. Will the last quarter be covered? This is actually a good time for us to say that just because you're a legacy student in Grad Plus does not absolve all of the issues that are coming down the line. So John, you want to tell us a little bit more about this?
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the challenges that we ran across just recently, because even though the legislation was passed in July of last year, the actual final rule wasn't published until May 1st. And we have a small subset of students that we're working with right now in a very similar situation. But in this scenario, what we have found out is that the student starting early, it does penalize them from 1/4 of their expected time to credential. So they would normally have 3 years or expected time to credential. Since they're starting 1/4 early, that is 3 years minus 1/4. So we're getting down into the nitty gritty in regards to tracking student progress and looking at the time that they're actually participating in the coursework.
Yeah, and it is that 3 years or time to degree, whichever is shorter.
Right.
And so while you might be a legacy, if you still only get 3 years of access. So that still leaves a year of uncovered if you're in a 4-year program, or if you're in a 2-year program, you know, you only get that 2 years. So if I'm worried in particular about people who extend for health reasons. I think there's an interesting lawsuit that we probably wouldn't do, but an interesting lawsuit about the ADA and things like that, that you can't penalize people for health issues. And if you have an extension that is a health issue, then the feds may well be maybe discriminating against you. So I think that there's a lot to be sorted out yet. There's a whole federal set of rules around when the calendar starts and when you're allowed to do things. The November calendar piece and the feds, and in terms of the educational policy, has been the sort of procedural law of the land forever, and this violates that. We'll have to see what that means. So, but it is not I mean, there's an interesting financial aid piece to this, but we're doing this for curricular reasons. We wouldn't do it if we didn't think the curriculum worked. And it does not solve every financial aid problem. We're going to have plenty of those coming down the line. Anonymous also asks, are there any concerns about retribution from the federal government once they find out that universities are using this one weird trick? I appreciate that. Please click on that. To circumvent their will, and will the people to lower the cost of attending universities. So I think that right now you can't really assume what the government's going to do. I think that we have good curricular reasons to do this, and we'll hang our hat on having good curricular reasons and justifications to try to help our students do as well as they can to, help take care of their neighbors and provide health care for the people of this great people of this country. So that's what we're working on. That's why we're here.
I would addend to that just to say that the regulatory guidance that the department sent out did include an example that was exactly like our early start. And we understand that students are getting penalized that 1 quarter. So I would reframe it as being like a quirky, tricky move, as being rather just a savvy way to look at a problem.
Yeah. All right, Sarah, we're nearing the top of the hour. I think you've got a few more slides, a few more things that we want to get through. People may have a few more questions. So
No more slides, just a couple of interesting stats about who's joining us on Monday. One of I would say the lead proof point here is the Chicago Medical School. Again, as a cohort program, we have we have students who kind of go in and out all summer from Chicago Medical School. It's not uncommon in medical school. I got an offer from another school. I got an offer with a lot of scholarship from another school. Even though I want to come here, I got to go there. We tend to have a lot of churn, especially between now and when we start. But we have 162 withdrawals now versus 278 last year. So that's a big reduction.
It's a big deal.
And our yield, as everybody understands what yield is, it's the number of students to whom we offer admission who come. Our yield is at a 5-year. This is as long as it goes back. We think it's going to go back even almost 10 years. It's at a 5-year high of 55%. And that is amazing. So it's broken out at, we've ranged typically in the 41 to 48% range, but this is we've enrolled as science GPA is up. The average science GPA is up on 3.59 to 3.63. We'll take it, right? It's up. And I'm sure we're going to be able to unpack a lot more interesting data once we get under the hood. But I mean, CMS was able to fill an identical class of 203 students with 116 fewer offers, right? I mean, that's good work. On the podiatry front, we are 22% ahead in deposits in what is a flat deposit average nationally over the 11 colleges. We have 71 students who have committed as of today versus 58 students last week. So that's amazing, right? So we're seeing really good things. And one last one, MENP, their second summer, we were pretty much done. Everybody, 2 months earlier than last year. So from the MENP standpoint, that's where you can see it really affected decision making, because those students had a choice: start in summer, start in fall, and the majority of them are starting in summer. So just really interesting data coming kind of fast and furious, and we'll keep adding to it and sharing it with you as appropriate.
It'll be fascinating to see what this leads us to do next and what it leads other institutions to do, right? To think about this. I watched an institution, a medical school, a DO school, advance its start date into the summer, and their melt decreased too. I mean, I think that it'll be really interesting. And what do we do curricularly with that 14 versus 15 quarters, right? How do we think about that quarter? And I'll say that, one of the things that we are still wrestling with is how to help our students, with the loan questions, whether or not whether insult has been added to injury by not being listed amongst the professional, loan programs, or you need to have a cosigner for your private loan, but you don't come from generational wealth. How do we solve that? How do we help people solve that? We've actually been looking at a lot of stuff. We've been looking at partnerships with mission-based lenders. We've been looking at, could the university do it? We've been looking at what the what professional societies like the Association of American Medical Colleges have something for medical schools. What are other people going to be doing? What might the state do? So we've been looking at a lot of different models, and none of them are perfect, I think is the only thing I can specifically say. None of them are perfect. You want to say a little more about that, Sarah?
No, no, I mean, no, I agree with you. There's none of them are perfect, but we're going to, we might have to sacrifice the perfect for the good
Yeah.
in the short term. And there's just been a lot of work, I know, especially on Gavin and Emily in finance leading that for us. And so more to come on that. But I think we had some fairly good news coming out of the what did you send me today, John, that the they're kind of coming together in, is it the Senate or Congress to really go after nursing as a profession, and
But
that,
it's only on one side of the hill.
oh,
It's
well,
only, I think I can't remember if it's only in the House or only in the Senate, but
but at
yeah.
least it's moving, at least
Yeah, it is. And maybe it can come together in conference, but who knows what that really. So I was on the Hill in March, I want to say. I don't know why I look up when I try to figure that out. It doesn't really help. But in March, and a couple of staffers from the majority were there trying to explain why to a whole bunch of universities why they were doing this. And I'll be honest, they had no clue how any of this works, why clinical education is expensive. I think they're doing this out of reasons that are not practical. And so I don't expect them to have solutions that are practical coming down the pike.
Yeah.
So we do have just a couple of more minutes before the top of the hour, just a chance for us to rip around the room. This has been a huge lift, and people have done a lot of work. And often, in order for a project like this to be successful, there is something that is exciting people about this work. It's not, there's something that people have hung on to. So for each of you, something you're excited about in this that you're looking forward to and what you want to see. And we'll start with you, Sarah.
I remember having a conversation with Jim early on about this, and he was saying, well, like maybe we'll get like 30 students or something. And I remember thinking, I'm gonna prove that wrong, Jim.
No.
But I'm excited.
You're excited
I'm
to prove
excited
him
to
wrong.
see. Well, yes. No, no. I'm excited. We had a little pizza party here between student success and wellness and SEM yesterday, because we just all needed to blow off a little steam, and it was we were just looking around saying, I think we did it. I think we did it. And so it was just it's just been very gratifying, and I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm excited to pass it off, because we're about ready to turn around and go get the next batch. So I'm just so in awe of my team.
Yeah, it's been great.
So.
John. Then Marilyn. Yeah.
Yeah. Similar. I think what I've seen is a lot of financial aid administrators across the country and the listservs and the professional associations who have been saying that they're very concerned about the state of financial aid as it moves forward. And as difficult as it's going to be in the future, it was difficult in the past. Looking back, though, it's almost the golden years whenever we had the Grad Plus loan and a 15-minute application that could allow students to be able to gain access to financial aid. One of the pieces that I look forward to the most is the challenge of this. I do believe that a lot of people are leaving the financial aid profession because of the difficulty that we're looking at. And I look at this like, if I'm going to be successful at this, then that means I can get through this. And I do believe that as a whole, I'm seeing a lot of people seeing like these types of challenges and trying to push through them. And we don't always get it right the first time, but I feel like, and this last week is a really good example of that, that we have such a team of people who are working together and trying to understand all of these things. And one of the things I found out this last week is that I'm not by myself. And seeing that everybody is working together to overcome this only makes the whole group successful as we go forward through this. So I love that.
Yeah, quickly then, Marilyn.
I would kind of have to say the same thing. I am just so grateful for the team that worked on this course and built this quality course, and that Abby and I are able to be a part of it. And I'm super excited to work with the students and get students excited about interprofessionalism early. And I would say that's probably my biggest excitement is the students.
Marc Grumet.
I'm with Marilyn on this one. She had mentioned earlier hoping to create some IP champions. I'm excited to see if we can help some of the summer students love the HIPS course as much as we do. Fingers crossed.
Marc Glucksman, bring us home.
It's really starting a virtual community, getting students really excited for the in-person experience. And I love travel, and in the very beginning, we're right at the point right before the plane takes off.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we're sort of aligning the focus, momentum's building, we see the horizon, it's completely open to whatever possibilities there are, and we have soaring aspirations.
And I just noticed your South is Up map behind you.
Well, so very quickly, this is a map that's in most classrooms in Australia, and this is the background I use for perspective.
That's great.
Okay, this is data, and it's absolutely correct, but we need to shift our perspective.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank each of you for all the work that you've done, as well as the whole team that I know is behind this in each college, for each student, for the whole university. This is a huge lift and really impressive, and one of the things I really, really like to brag about when I'm outside the university. So thanks so much to all of you. Thanks to each of you for being with us and joining us on the town hall today. Thanks for all you do to support our faculty, our staff, and our students. It is the work of people like you that make the university such a special place to be. It is Friday. I hope you get to have a weekend. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.